Hello, I'm glad to be here, and today we are going to talk a little bit about unit testing by taking another look at this topic. But first of all, who am I? As I was introduced before, I'm Cezary Sanecki, and I'm currently working as a software engineer in Allegro. And I'm also letting people get to know me by publicating some articles on my blog and by publicating some posts on my LinkedIn profile and by recording vlog on my YouTube channel. I'm also ex-civil engineer, so I changed industry several years ago to become a programmer, and I'm currently working. And after work, I'm Warsaw Java User Group leader. Okay, so let's get to the point. I assume that we all write unit tests, but do you ever wonder if they are good ones? What exactly means that the unit tests are good? And in IT industry, there are a lot of fancy acronyms that are used to describe something, and of course, unit testing is no exception here. And there is a well-known acronym called FIRST. And FIRST is for fast, isolated, repeatable, self-validating, and timely. So tests should be really fast. Of course, it's obvious to be executed, but of course, they also should be really fast to be read, to be also understandable. So they should give us quick feedback what's going on in our application. Tests also should be isolated. So as a unit test definition says, tests should be isolated from the external world, so from the IO operations. And of course, they should be isolated from each other. So the result of one test should not affect the execution of the other test. And of course, tests should be also repeatable. So no matter how many times and on which machine I run my test, they should always return the same result. So they should be deterministic. And of course, they should be self-validating. So there is no need of manual work done by developer to check whether the test fails or not. And it is for timely. So I think that author of this acronym meant that tests should be written before the actual implementation. So to sum up this acronym, I think that the most important part is that tests should be readable. So they should give us quick feedback what's going on in our application, what corner cases we have tested. And of course, they should verify something. So they should verify our understanding of business requirements that we coded. And of course, they should give us confidence. So they should be some kind of safe net that prevent us from providing bugs to our application while we are changing the code base. So moving forward, what test building blocks do we have in our toolbox? And in object-oriented programming world, there's a concept of class and methods. And of course, we use this concept to write tests. So there's a test class with test cases, and each test case has body, but it is often written in a Gherkin convention. So there's a section given when then, or maybe in an AAA convention, which is arrange, act, assert. And of course, in the unit test, we need some kind of unit to be tested, and we have to create it. And sometimes it needs some kind of collaborators to be instantiated. So as I mentioned before, I assume that we all write unit tests, so we use these test building blocks, but how we can use them, maybe in a different way, maybe better, maybe not, we will see. So first of all, the default approach that we use is, for instance, when we have a class called order service, we just create order service test or order service spec, and we all put all our test cases in this test class. But what if this test class becomes bigger and bigger? In production code, we just create another smaller classes and delegate there some kind of responsibilities. So maybe we can use also this approach in our tests. And of course, the default approach, creating and grouping all test cases per class, is a good enough approach, but maybe we can do it in a different way. So maybe we can use this concept, and instead of creating one giant, huge test class, we just can create smaller ones. So for instance, if we have a class that has 5 functionalities, maybe just we can create not one huge test class, but create 5 smaller test classes and put there all test cases that are related to this functionality. And the main advantage of this approach is that we just have, the smaller test classes, which are more readable and understandable from reader's perspective. And another approach is that is that we don't have to open these test classes to see what functionalities do we have in our application. And another approach is that when we have quite complicated setup and we need to test it in many different other ways, maybe we can also group some test cases per feature. So there's a quite complicated setup, and we just put it in a test class and write there some test cases. It's worth to give it a try, this approach. Okay, moving forward, test case naming. I know that in IT industry, the one of the most difficult thing is to name things, but I also assume that you know that we more often read code than write it. Also, in a AI world, also this is the same approach. So maybe it's worth to spend more time to write better names, to find better names for our concept, for elements that we create, and save us time in the future. So, for instance, if we have test case named like should update offer data, from my perspective, it's too generic. I don't really know what's going on in this test case. I just need to spend time to check the body of this test case and see what's going on here. And of course, I lose time to do it. And maybe it's worth to spend more time and find better name. For instance, maybe there's a corner case, or maybe some kind of thing that we want to test, and there is a side effect that we want to set offer as draft when data has changed. And for me, it's self-explanatory. I don't even have to check the body of this test case. I know that there's a side effect when the data of offer has changed. Its status also is changed to be draft. Of course, there was a presentation about tips and tricks in IntelliJ, and from the unit testing perspective, there's also a nice shortcut in IntelliJ, which is presented here. And this shortcut is used to collapse our method bodies to see only their signatures. So it's also worth to try if you have, of course, good names for your test cases. And moving forward to test case body. And there is a section called given, and it's used to instantiate some data that are needed to run our test case. And imagine that you have such kind of structure, for instance, vehicle, and it requires a lot of fields to be set. And from this test case perspective that we see on the left side, I don't really know if this is important that color of this vehicle is red, or maybe the mark is BMW. I don't really know. I just have to check it in the when section, or maybe in a then section, or even in the production code. So why not we use the patterns that are invented, that are created in our IT industry? And for instance, there is a pattern called object matter pattern, and it is created to hide the complexity of instantiating some structures. So, for instance, on the right side, there is a nice way to highlight the reader what is important from this test case perspective. And as you can see, this is important that vehicle is sold and has two damaged parts. And it's the one of the most important advantage of this pattern. And of course, the other advantage is that we have only one place to be changed if our structure will change in the future. So I think that is also worth to try in your app. And of course, in assert section, there's similar approach, the similar pattern called assert object pattern. And of course, it has similar advantages like the previous pattern. But instead of instantiating object, we just hide the complexity of assertions. So for instance, instead of checking that our collection is empty, we just can name our method to provide better information for reader. So for instance, if we want to check that accepted parts is empty, we just can hide it, and we just can call it no handled parts. And of course, it's from my perspective more readable, so and understandable, and self-explanatory. Moving forward, because we are short on time, there's another approach to write a unit test. So for instance, imagine that you have a class called parcel locker, and you want to lock it for a client. And of course, in an assertion section, you would just check that the fields of this class are set to the proper values. And of course, it's a good approach, but imagine if you have a lot of test cases which will have similar assertions, and it will be quite complicated when the structure of this class will change. And for instance, you of course can use the pattern called assert object pattern, but maybe you can also look at this from other perspective. And maybe you can use the observable behaviors of your class. And for instance, if you log the parcel locker for one client, so after 5 minutes, maybe you cannot log it for another client. And of course, the advantage of this approach is that when the structure of this class will change in the future, this test will be resilient for this change. So maybe it's also worth to try. And the last thing, of course, there's a holy war about mocking and making fakes. And I think that it's also worth to try use fakes in your test, because as you can see, it could be quite more readable. So maybe it's also the another advantage of this approach is that you don't have to know how to exactly mock everything in your library or framework that you use to write test, but instead of that, you can write the simplest implementation of your contract, and you can use it in your test, and you don't have to know even how this contract looks like from the test case perspective. And another advantage of this approach is that when the structure of when the contract will change in the future, of course you have only one place to change it, but it's not a silver bullet, as we know, and also this has some kind of disadvantages, but maybe you can also give it a try, because the test will be more readable for you in the future and for your colleagues from team. So that's all from my side. I want to thank you, and of course I would like to invite you to participate in my training in Allegro about unit test, and of course to visit my social media. So thank you once again.